It was a cold, gray morning in New York City when Ariana Monroe stepped into JFK Airport, her oversized hoodie tucked loosely over designer joggers, and a soft leather Prada bag draped across one shoulder. The chill outside did little to touch her spirit. Today was a day she had dreamed about since she was 12. Her first solo flight, in first class, headed to Los Angeles for her biggest speaking engagement yet. Most wouldn't guess she was a millionaire, and even fewer would believe she was born a billionaire. Her father, Jeremiah Monroe, a technology mogul and philanthropist, had built his empire from the ground up. Ariana, however, wasn't riding his coattails. She had launched her own educational tech startup at just 17, aiming to bridge literacy gaps for underprivileged black children. Her app had recently hit 500,000 downloads, and she was invited as a keynote speaker at the Youth Empowerment and Innovation Summit, alongside names like Malala and Michelle Obama. And yet, she still felt a knot in her stomach, not from excitement, but from the invisible weight she often carried. Being a young black woman in a world that often didn't expect her to belong in the very places she strived to reach. As she handed her first-class boarding pass to the attendant at gate 32B, the woman smiled with mild surprise. "First class, sweetie?" Ariana smiled politely. She was used to that surprise look people gave her, as if luxury had a face they expected, and hers wasn't it. "Yes, ma'am," she answered, offering that soft professionalism she had mastered over the years. She made her way down the jet bridge, her sneakers squeaking slightly against the polished floor, butterflies dancing in her stomach. As she stepped into the plane, the flight attendant stationed at the front looked her up and down, hesitating just a moment too long. "Welcome aboard." It wasn't rude, but it wasn't warm either. Ariana replied with her usual grace, "Thank you," and then turned right into the first-class cabin. Seat 2A, window, just as she had selected, just as she had paid for, just as she had always dreamed. She moved forward, ready to place her bag overhead. But someone was already there, a middle-aged white man, maybe in his late 50s, in a sharp gray business suit and a polished leather briefcase tucked neatly beneath the seat. He looked like someone out of a Wall Street commercial, confident, crisp, and clearly not expecting her. Ariana tapped gently on the headrest. "Excuse me, I believe this is my seat 2A?" The man looked up from his phone slowly, then down at her hoodie, then pulled out his earbuds. Confusion flickered across his face, followed quickly by dismissal. He chuckled. "I don't think so, sweetheart. This is first class. You might want to double-check your ticket. Economy's further back." Ariana blinked. She didn't get angry, not yet. She'd heard this kind of tone before. She'd lived it in stores, classrooms, and even corporate meetings. The reflex to doubt her was a shadow that followed her often. "I'm sure," she replied politely, pulling out her digital boarding pass. "Seat 2A. He waved his hand as if shooing a child from an adult's table. "Look, I'm not trying to be rude, but there's a process to all of this. You probably picked the wrong seat or were upgraded by accident. They do that sometimes. Just ask the attendant to find your real seat. Your real seat." Those words struck her like a quiet slap. She looked around. The white woman already seated in 2C, aisle seat, avoided eye contact. The man across the way, in 3A, glanced up from his newspaper, then turned the page louder than necessary. No one spoke. No one helped. The flight attendant approached. "Is there a problem here?" she asked, eyes flickering between Ariana and the well-dressed man. Before Ariana could respond, he spoke with smooth confidence. "Yes, actually. This young lady seems to think this is her seat, but clearly she's mistaken." Now all eyes in first class were on her. 1 moment ago, she was just another passenger. Now, she was a question mark at the center of their world, challenging the norms they didn't know they held. "I have a boarding pass," Ariana said firmly but kindly, offering her phone. The attendant leaned in to scan it, her smile strained. As she did that, the man let out a smug laugh under his breath. "You have to admit it's an honest mistake. She just doesn't look like—" He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Didn't look like she belonged. Didn't look like someone who could afford a $5,000 seat. Didn't look like a billionaire's daughter. Didn't look, perhaps, like someone who should be treated with respect. Ariana stood still, calm, not because she wasn't burning inside, but because she'd been taught by the strongest women in her bloodline to never let them see her flinch. They have my ID on file. My assistant booked this ticket. I can show you my reservation number, if that helps. The flight attendant took a step back as she confirmed the details on the tablet, and finally looked the man dead on. Sir, she is correct. This seat belongs to her. You'll need to return to your assigned seat to continue boarding. The man recoiled, now clearly defensive. Are you serious? You're just going to take her word for it. He leaned back in the seat. I've flown this route every week for 20 years. This is my seat. And just like that, he refused to move. Everyone waited. The tension was sharp but quiet, like the moment before a storm. Ariana's voice didn't rise. She simply looked at the attendant and said softly, "It's okay. I'll wait for the captain." That sentence, uttered with such grace, carried more weight than shouting ever could. It was her quiet way of saying, I deserve better. It was a refusal to play small just to make others comfortable. The attendant nodded and radioed the cabin. And Ariana? She took 2 steps back and stood, poised, graceful, certain, not because she wanted to be a problem, but because she wouldn't let herself be erased. The clock ticked. 2 minutes passed. The rest of the passengers fidgeted, whispered. Everyone wanted the moment to disappear, but it no longer could. Ariana wasn't backing down. Not now. Not ever again. And outside, the gate crew alerted the captain. And the world was about to change, and none of them knew it yet. When the captain was called and Ariana was asked to wait near the front galley, the man still sat in her seat, legs crossed, fingers tapping his armrest like nothing had happened. The entitlement wasn't even hidden. It was worn like perfume, strong, bold, and meant to linger in the room long after he was gone. Ariana leaned against the wall near the cabin curtains, eyes cast down for a moment, taking a breath deep into her chest. She wasn't just fighting for a seat. She was fighting, once again, for a right to exist in spaces like these, without explanation, without proof, without suspicion. As the moments passed, soft boarding music played over the intercom, a light piano melody that should have been calming, yet now felt like a cruel soundtrack to something invisible, something heavy. Passengers walked by slowly through the jet bridge, stealing glances in her direction. Some must have heard the exchange. One woman gave her a pitiful smile, the kind people offer when they don't know what to say, but still choose not to speak. Another older white woman clutched her handbag tighter as she walked by Ariana. The irony didn't escape her. Here she was, a black teenage millionaire, being looked at like she didn't belong, like she was a threat. It always amazed her how quickly some people locked their doors or judgment when they saw black skin, even without provocation, even in first class. Her mind drifted to something her grandmother once told her, a phrase passed down through generations like an old spiritual. You don't have to scream to be heard. Just stand tall and let the truth speak louder than hate. That sentence kept playing in her mind like a record. She wasn't going to scream. She wasn't going to plead. She was going to stand tall. The curtain behind her rustled suddenly. A young black flight attendant, no older than 30, stepped through quietly. I wanted to say I see you, the attendant said gently, her voice just above a whisper. And I'm sorry. Ariana looked at her, surprised. The woman looked like she wanted to say more, like she had her own story too, her own quiet archive of moments where she was underestimated, dismissed, spoken over, or spoken down to. But instead of telling it, she reached into her jacket pocket and handed Ariana a small sealed bottle of water with shaking hands. You shouldn't have to be polite right now, but you are. That's strength, sweetheart. Then she walked away quickly before anyone noticed. Ariana held the water bottle tightly, eyes wet but unspilled. It wasn't about hydration. It was about being seen, even for half a minute. As the flight attendants finalized boarding checks and the last call was announced over the speakers, the captain finally stepped onto the aircraft through the side jet bridge, her uniform sharp, her steps precise. But the real surprise? She was a black woman, Captain Michelle Harris. one of the few black female pilots at the airline. Her presence alone felt like justice walking down the aisle. The tension in the cabin thickened. Eyes shifted again. This time, many people sat straighter, unsure of how to react now that the person in power mirrored Ariana's skin tone. Ariana felt her heart quicken, not from fear, from knowing what this moment could mean. Maybe, just maybe, things were about to change. The captain turned toward her calmly. "Miss Monroe?" "Yes," Ariana said, voice steady now. "Can you show me your boarding pass?" She handed it over, along with her ID. The captain nodded respectfully and then walked a few feet over to seat 2A, where the man was still scrolling through emails, oblivious or pretending to be. "Sir," Captain Harris said clearly, standing tall, "I need to see your boarding pass." He didn't look up, just grunted. "Some mistake, apparently. This girl thinks this is her seat." "This is her seat," the captain interrupted calmly, her voice even but firm. Now he looked up, his smugness cracked. "Wait, what? That can't be right. This is seat 2A. That's what mine says. Maybe switch us around. I fly this route all the time." "Let's see your boarding pass," she said again, holding out one hand. "Now, please." He grumbled, pulled out his paper stub, and handed it over without looking at her. The captain scanned it, then nodded. "Sir," she said, "your seat is 14C. Economy." A silence fell over several rows. Ariana watched, tight-lipped but still poised. The moment felt frozen, not because he was wrong, but because of how quickly he had assumed she was. "Then there's been a mistake," he insisted, checking his ticket. "I asked for an upgrade. Maybe it didn't go through, but I can pay. I'll pay right now, I don't mind." "I'm sorry, sir," the captain said. "The seat is booked already and boarding is complete. You'll need to relocate to your assigned seat." His face turned red, not from embarrassment, but from entitlement being challenged. His voice dropped, laced with hostility. "You're seriously telling me you're kicking me out for her?" There it was. Not even this passenger. Just her. The venom on that one syllable stung more than any curse word. The captain didn't flinch. "I'm reminding you," she replied, "that you are not in the correct seat. This has nothing to do with who she is. But since you've disrupted boarding and refused staff instructions, protocol now demands escalation. You'll need to deplane." He shot up from the seat now, anger boiling over. "So that's it? I get kicked off because I dare to question her?" "No," the captain said calmly. "You're being removed because you refused to correct a mistake, and in doing so, disrespected a fellow passenger repeatedly." Security was called. The entire cabin was hushed as he gathered his briefcase, muttering loudly. A few recorded on their phones. Others watched in silence. He gave one last look to Ariana as he left, not of apology, but of disbelief. But Ariana didn't return his stare. She simply stepped forward and took her seat. Seat 2A, rightfully hers. The moment she sat down, the woman in 2C leaned over and whispered, just loud enough for her to hear, "I'm sorry I didn't say anything, but that was brave." Ariana smiled softly and replied, "Thank you. Kindness goes a long way." She wasn't angry. She was exhausted, but proud. She didn't need to clap back or prove her name. Her existence in that seat was proof enough. And somewhere deep in her heart, she knew this was more than a seat on a plane. It was a symbol, a reminder, a spark. And the world had just seen it happen, maybe for the first time. The plane was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of silence that doesn't mean peace, but wait. The kind that hovers around your skin, lingering in the air like a storm that had just passed. No thunder now. Just people trying to breathe again. Ariana placed her handbag on her lap and gently fastened her seatbelt. Her fingers moved automatically, but her mind was somewhere else. Still sitting in the moment, stunned but steady. She had just witnessed a man publicly humiliated for his choice to humiliate her first. It wasn't satisfaction she felt. It wasn't revenge. It was something quieter. Something far more complicated. She turned her head to the window, watching the luggage crew outside load the final suitcases into the plane's belly. Her reflection, faint in the glass, looked older somehow, wiser, tired but proud. She hadn't cried. Not once. Not on the outside, at least. Inside, it was different. Inside, Ariana was cradling thousands of unanswered questions, just like she had each time her presence in a room had been challenged by someone who believed she didn't fit the frame. Why do I still feel like I have to prove I'm allowed to be here? Why do people see only my skin before they see my story? Why is my silence mistaken for weakness, but my voice mistaken for aggression? But Ariana didn't chase those thoughts. She let them settle like dust, falling slowly, quietly, until they became part of the ground beneath her again, the foundation she'd walk on with pride. The captain's voice eventually echoed through the cabin, steady as ever. "Good afternoon. This is your captain, Michelle Harris. Thank you for your patience during an unexpected delay. We're preparing for takeoff. Cabin crew, please take your seats." The flight finally moved forward, but Ariana knew, even before takeoff, this flight had already gone to a place none of them expected. Something bigger had just taken off, and it was flying straight into the hearts of thousands, maybe millions. She just didn't know it yet. Somewhere in the seat behind her, a soft chime of message alert from someone's phone lit up, then another ding, then a whisper. "Is this her?" "Yeah, it's going viral already, it's her." Ariana closed her eyes. She could feel what was happening without even needing to look. A passenger had recorded the entire confrontation. The insult, the patience, the dignified silence, the captain's firm truth piled against the quiet arrogance of that man and his walk of shame out of first class. 20 minutes into the flight, the video had already made a Twitter, or whatever it was called now, gathering thousands of retweets per minute. Ariana didn't know yet. All she knew now was that her body was aching in ways that weren't physical. She wasn't bruised on the outside, but somewhere inside, a familiar ache had reawakened, the same one felt by generations before her. The ache of being questioned, erased, doubted. It was the ache of being too much and not enough all at once. And yet, instead of bitterness, she whispered a quiet mantra her mother taught her in childhood. "You are worthy. Your presence is not permission. You do not have to prove where you belong. You belong because you are." She remembered the days when believing that felt impossible, when she watched her father enter boardrooms where no one looked like him, when reporters didn't ask about his innovation, only about his race, when he taught her to keep her back straight, even when her heart bent from the weight of being different. And despite all those lessons, no one truly prepared her for what it felt like to be called mistaken simply for sitting in the right seat. Not a wrong seat, not a borrowed seat, not a stolen seat, the right one. Something stirred inside her chest, pride maybe, or the beginning of something more powerful, resolve. As the plane lifted off the ground, so did something else, a sense of becoming. She curled in closer to the window, hugging her knees, wrapping her mind in silence. Not because she was shrinking, but because in that silence, she was regathering, rebuilding within. Kindness had not made her weak. It had made her impossible to defeat without becoming what tried to break her. Halfway through the flight attendant returned. The same young woman from earlier who'd handed her a bottle of water in secret. This time, though, she returned with a tray. On it sat a hot cup of chamomile tea, a soft linen cloth neatly rolled beside a chocolate chip cookie still warm from a galley. "We usually don't serve snacks until after takeoff," she said, kneeling slightly next to Ariana's seat, so no one else would hear. "But this isn't usual, is it?" Ariana let out a breath. Not a sigh of exhaustion, but a release. "Thank you," was all she said. The attendant smiled, but looked down for a second, her own voice shaking. "I just want you to know, you gave a lot of us hope today. Watching you choose dignity when you could have screamed, that was power. Real power." Ariana didn't know how to respond. Not yet. So again, she nodded, and in that nod, understanding passed between them. Black woman to black woman. Stranger to stranger. Survivor to survivor. Kindness. That was what stayed at the center. Not spite, not vengeance, not protest with megaphone, but protest with presence. She didn't try to clear her name. She lived it. Right there, she drank the tea slowly, savored the warmth, and let the sugary sweetness of the cookie remind her. Joy was still hers. Even now, by the time the flight descended into LAX, Rihanna's Lift Me Up played low in her wireless headphones, her thoughts somewhere between heaven and grounded reality. The cabin's windows glowed with golden sunset hues, casting quiet sunshine over first class, as if the universe was trying to wash away the tension, painting the ending in golden light. The wheels kissed the runway gently. The brakes didn't screech. They sighed, as if even the plane knew it had carried something heavier today than just passengers. By the time the seatbelt sign turned off, people were standing more gently. Several offered smiles they hadn't before, a soft nod, a whispered bravo from a lady holding a copy of The Atlantic. A man with salt and pepper dreadlocks tipped an invisible hat. Still, no one said too much, because the truth was they all saw it, and silence, this time, didn't hide ignorance. It carried awareness. As Ariana stepped off the plane, calm, collected, bag over her shoulder, a buzz met her in the terminal. Her phone vibrated nonstop. Notifications blinked faster than she could read. Texts, mentions, missed calls from her team. Hashtags trending. Hashtag Seat 2A, hashtag She Belonged There, hashtag Grace Under Fire, hashtag Ariana Monroe. The video had exploded. Across platforms, across ocean lines, across color lines too. Little did she know, her quiet response to racism had just become a global symbol of grace. And that seat, that one, overlooked seat in 2A, it would soon come to represent far more than luxury. It was now a seat of change. As Ariana stepped out of the plane and into the busy gate of LAX, the smell of strong airport coffee mixed with the quiet hum of travelers weaving through their own journeys. But her steps were slower, her eyes softer, and her heart heavier, or maybe fuller. The moment her foot touched the terminal floor, her phone buzzed again. It hadn't stopped the entire flight, but this time it was different. Her assistant had left over 15 messages. Her parents had texted call home now. A notification on her lock screen from a news app read, Teen CEO removed from first class seat for looking like she didn't belong. Her calm reaction sparks worldwide outrage. Ariana paused, not because she was surprised the world had seen what happened, but because she knew that even in goodness, being seen as a black girl could still bring fear with it. People were reacting. People were calling, commenting, judging, defending, attacking, uplifting, all at once. And her heart, it wasn't ready for the noise. After all, she hadn't asked for attention. All she ever wanted was respect. She sat down by a quiet window facing the runway and opened her phone for the first time. The video had reached over 11 million views. Her name, Ariana Monroe, was trending in more than 5 countries. Celebrities had reposted the video with words like strength and class. A few airlines were even tweeting their support. And in the middle of all that noise, a single comment from a young black girl stood out the most. I've always felt like I didn't belong in certain places. Watching her gave me permission to take up space. Ariana blinked back tears. They came faster now. Not the sharp kind from pain, but the warm kind from being understood after so long of being questioned. Her father finally called, and when she answered, her voice cracked before she even said hello. I'm okay, she whispered. On the other end, Jeremiah Monroe didn't speak at first, just breathed slowly into the phone, then said, You did good, baby. You made us proud. But more than that, you made yourself proud. Ariana nodded silently. She could hear the strength in his voice, but also the sadness, the lingering ache that a father could design satellites for global networks, but still couldn't shield his daughter from racism at 35,000 feet. They spoke for a few more minutes. Short, gentle, mostly in silence. Because sometimes love doesn't need long speeches, just presence. And Ariana, though she had been alone on that plane, had never truly been alone. She had her ancestors beside her, and now she had millions behind her. When she reached her hotel, there were reporters outside, paparazzi, bloggers with ring lights, microphones being waved in the air, questions shouted over each other. How did it make you feel? Do you forgive him? Do you think the airline did enough? Are you planning to sue? She didn't answer. Not because she couldn't, but because she was still living the moment from the inside out. No blog would understand the feeling of standing silently while your worth was publicly doubted. No reporter could describe how it feels to have years of education, grace, and success overlooked, because your skin told a different story in the eyes of someone else. She walked quietly into the building, smiling politely, again, not out of fear, but kindness. Because Ariana didn't want to be famous for what happened. She wanted to be remembered for how she responded. That night, from her hotel room, she sat by the window with her laptop open, fingers hovering over the keyboard. She thought about writing a long response. A tweet, a statement, a press release, maybe. Her PR team had already drafted one, filled with polished words and safe lines. But Ariana deleted it all. She opened a new file. With her heart still pounding, she typed the only words she truly meant. There are many ways to fight injustice. You don't always need fire. Sometimes, all you need is grace, truth, and the patience to let the world see who you really are. Today, I didn't raise my voice. I didn't choose hate. I chose to stand steady and sit down in the seat I paid for. That seat wasn't just for me. It was for every young black woman who was ever told to move, to wait, to prove herself twice. I won't fight hate with hate. I will fight it by continuing to rise. Ariana Monroe. She posted it. And within 10 minutes, the world paused all over again. Teachers began sharing her story in classrooms. Black students were writing essays about what it meant to carry yourself like Ariana. An airline executive, anonymously, donated $100,000 to her literacy nonprofit for inner-city youth. On TikTok, teens were using the audio from her quote in skits, dances, poetry. Influencers whispered C2A energy in mirror selfies as a way of saying, I own my place in the world. And somewhere deep in the quiet corners of the world, a little girl sat on the edge of her bed, dark-skinned and barefoot, clutching a pillow and whispering to it, one day, I want to be like her. And that was everything. The next morning, Ariana received a call from the very airline where it all began, not to explain, not to apologize, but to ask, what could we change? She didn't answer right away. She needed to feel if they meant it, and if they did, she'd help them see not just her story, but the stories of millions of others just like her. For every Ariana who sat in seat 2A, there were thousands who'd been sent back to seat 32E simply because someone assumed they didn't belong in the front. She wasn't here to shame. She was here to build, because that's what kindness does. It doesn't erase pain, it transforms it. Her next speech at the Youth Empowerment Summit was no longer going to be about business strategy. It was going to be about invisibility and how to still shine even when the world refuses to look your way. She titled her talk, What Happens When You Take Your Seat Anyway? And as she rehearsed in the mirror, wearing her curls down this time, eyes focused, voice steady, Ariana understood something she hadn't known before the flight. Silence does not mean defeat. Dignity does not mean weakness. Kindness does not mean surrender. And that sometimes a seat isn't just a seat. Sometimes it's a revolution, one that begins not in anger, but in love. She had not responded with power. She had become power. And that power now belonged not just to her, but to every person who ever sat at the back and dreamed of the front. Tomorrow, she would return home. But tonight, Ariana slept not just as a billionaire's daughter, not just as a CEO, not even as a girl from seat 2A. She slept as a symbol, a promise, a quiet warrior. And beyond the window, the city lights blinked softly, as if the world had finally learned to open its eyes. 1 month had passed. 30 quiet, beautiful, unforgettable days since Ariana sat in seat 2A and changed more than just a direction of flight. She shifted the altitude of conscience. Her name was no longer just written in tech news and charity blogs. It was spoken across dinner tables, quoted in classrooms, written in letters by little black girls telling her, "You made me feel proud to be me." Life hadn't exactly slowed down since that day. In fact, it had gotten louder. Every hour brought new interviews, brand deals, invitations to TV shows, Podcasts, protests, business partnerships. People kept asking her the same thing in different ways. How does it feel to be the girl who stayed kind and still won? What made you so calm on that flight? Would you do anything differently? Her answers were always honest. Simple. Humble. I wasn't trying to win, she said once in a quiet interview. I was trying not to lose myself. Because Serena once said, the day I stop fighting for equality is the day I'm in my grave. And Ariana had lived that truth at 35,000 feet above Earth and still kept her crown on. But something inside her kept whispering, this can't just be a viral moment. Viral fades. What she wanted was something eternal. So she made a decision, not loud, not rushed, but intentional, quiet, like how she had been on that plane, but filled with purpose. Right from her home, in the heart of Atlanta, Ariana announced the start of something new, the Seat 2A Foundation, a movement not just built on justice, but on visibility, not just resistance, but reimagination, not just healing, but honoring. Her foundation was created for young Black women and girls who have been displaced, silenced, overlooked, or pushed to the back, whether that be in classrooms, jobs, airports, hospitals, or even dinner conversations. 2A was a seat for them to come back to themselves. Because sometimes, she said in the opening video, fighting for a seat means remembering you already earned it. The campaign spread like peaceful wildfire. Donors offered funds without hesitation, but Ariana asked first for stories. She wanted handwritten letters, videos, drawings, poems. She wanted truth, real truth, not filtered by brand goals or public image. Just truth from the girls who had been made to feel small in a world that didn't know how to handle their shine. And what came in was overwhelming. A girl in Mississippi wrote about how, in third grade, her teacher told her, "You'll slow the class down." Now she was top of her engineering team. A 61-year-old retired nurse from Alabama sent a voice message crying, "I've been made to feel invisible for most of my life. Watching you sit in that seat. God, baby, you made me seen." Even little boys wrote in, explaining how their sisters were shamed for speaking too confidently, for dreaming too big. I watched the video and thought of my sister. "You're her hero now," one boy said. But not everything was soft. There was resistance, too. There were people who said Ariana was playing the race card, that she was dividing people, that she made it a bigger deal than it had to be. Some said it was just a misunderstanding. Others argued the man probably made an honest mistake. A few even sent hate mail. But Ariana didn't argue. She didn't reply to hate. She remembered her grandmother's words. "We don't teach the storm how to behave. We just build stronger homes." And so she kept building. She used that same kindness, the kind that doesn't beg for approval but stands in truth, and continued to rise with grace. Schools across the country began hosting Seat 2A days, where students were invited to share their stories when they felt unseen and what could have helped them feel empowered. Bookstores set up Seat 2A windows, highlighting voices from unheard communities. Universities offered Ariana honorary leadership awards. But more than that, her foundation began quietly paying tuition for dozens of young women who had been admitted into college but couldn't afford it. No press release, no media attention, just kindness passed forward. And then came the day. Months after that first-class flight changed everything, Ariana returned to New York and boarded the same airline. This time, she wasn't flying for a keynote. She wasn't flying for business meetings. She wasn't even flying to inspire crowds. She was flying alongside 23 girls graduating from her program, all of them headed to their first year of university. Seat 2A to 24F, they filled the plane. All colors, all cultures, all kinds of beauty. Each girl wore a hoodie that read, "I deserve to be here." As Ariana sat once again in her old favorite, 2A, she looked around and felt warmth in her chest. The skies hadn't changed. The airport hadn't changed. But they had. They were no longer passengers unsure of their worth. They were women reclaiming their space and helping others do the same. Halfway through flight, the pilot's voice came over the intercom. "We'd like to recognize Ariana Monroe on board with us today. Because of her, His airline revised policies, retrained staff, and learned that seating isn't just about names on tickets. It's about dignity, too. Applause filled the cabin. Some cried. Others didn't clap with hands, but with hearts. Ariana smiled, humble as always. She didn't raise her fist. She didn't stand. She just gave a small nod, the same way she had months ago when kindness was the only thing she had protect her. And even then, it was enough. When the flight landed, a camera crew from a children's news channel asked Ariana what she would say to the man who tried to take her seat if she ever saw him again. She thought for a second, then softly replied, "I'd say, thank you. Because of you, I remembered who I am. And I learned that standing tall doesn't always mean standing up. Sometimes it just means staying seated in what's already yours." The reporter asked one more question. "What will you do next?" Ariana looked out at the young girls behind her. One was writing poetry. Another was sketching the clouds out the window. One was praying. And one was asleep, hoodie tucked under her chin, smiling in her dreams. Ariana's voice was calm. "Next," she said, "I'll keep making space. So that one day, every little black girl knows she never needed permission to take her seat in the first place." And with that, she walked into the future, not as a passenger, but as a pilot of change, one seat at a time.